Good afternoon, everyone. Prynawn da pawb. My name is Jodie McEvoy and I work for Wales and West Utilities. Today, I will be presenting on my paper, Safety, Health, Environment and Asset Internal Audit. Specifically, what is the purpose of internal audit and how do we continually improve our approach? Before I begin, I wanted to introduce myself. Does anybody know what these pictures have in common? Does anybody know the link there? Well, these all happened in 2006. Pluto got declassified as a planet, Italy had just won the World Cup, David Tennant was our doctor, and Google had just bought YouTube for $1.65 billion. And that is the year that I joined Wales and West Utilities. I've been in the gas industry for 12 years. That's such a long time, and I'm still a young person. That's amazing. I started off as an admin assistant in connections and went through to customer service. And I really realized that I had a passion for improving standards for my customers and my colleagues. So I really found my feet in asset management, specializing in gas quality, but now my new home is process safety, standards and assurance. So my aim today, I want to give you a background on the purpose of internal audit and how this links in with our management systems. And I also want to go through some of the methodology on how we prioritize our audits in our business. I also want to touch on the importance of reviewing our procedures around audit from time to time, as it provides us opportunities to improve what we're doing. And then I'm going to dive into the project that I delivered at the end of last year to incorporate some of those improvements that I recognised. And then concluding with some benefits this has brought to Wales and West Utilities, the benefits that I've got personally from delivering this project and looking towards the future. And of course, happy to take any questions that you judges may have as well. So the purpose of internal audit is not this. How many people in this room can sympathise with this when it comes round to audit time? Show of hands, please. This is really not what auditing is about. There are some common misconceptions that auditors are nitpickers and they just want to find holes in processes and the work that we do. And I'm sure people think that we have a hit sheet of victims or targets that we want to pick on once a year, but that really isn't what auditing is about. Audit is there as a control to make sure that we have processes in place to protect our colleagues, our employees, our customers, protect their safety, and to protect the environment from any negative effects such as incidents or accidents. It's a governance process, and it ensures that we have risk management processes in place, ensuring that we're monitoring our compliance with legislation, at a government level, standards from the HSE, international standard framework, or even our own policies and procedures. In a nutshell, it helps us achieve our objectives and to continually improve our processes. So to achieve our objectives when it comes to safety, health, environment, and asset activities, we follow the methodologies and framework contained within the management systems. So we adopt the internationally recognized management system for asset management, ISO 55001, and occupational health and safety management, ISO 45001. And we link our audits to this framework to make sure that we are delivering safety for our colleagues and our customers, and we are providing a reliable gas supply. And we're putting our customers and our stakeholders' needs at the very centre of our business decisions as well. So high quality standards means that we can audit against it as well to ensure that what we're doing is actually what we say we should be doing as a best practice. So when we look at how we're going to prioritise our audits and link it to the management system, we use the business risk process, which enables us to score our activities and score our processes so that we can prioritise what needs to be looked at. So our processes and our assets are scored on how likely they are to go wrong and what is the impact that can have on us as a business. There are different levels for this, but I'm just going to focus on inherent risk, because the inherent risk score is what feeds into our annual and our 3-year rolling audit plans. So what does it mean when I say inherent risk? that's the likelihood or the impact of something happening when there are no working controls in place. So a score can be allocated on how likely it is to occur. Is it very low probability or is it a high probability? And what is the effect? Is it going to affect us greatly, or is it not going to be much effect on us at all as a business? So these are rated in this way. And when we talk about our assets that are rated, what is an asset? It's not just pipe in the ground. An asset covers our people, it covers our financials, and it covers our reputation as well. So these are the things that are scored. And we look at risks, not in just terms of safety, but on financial impact, on security of supply, environmental impact, as well as our reputational impact as well. These all feed into the business risk process. So we review our procedures because there are different controls in place to stop accidents from happening. So if you look at the Swiss cheese model as a term of reference, accident causation has lots of opportunities to occur. So we have the cheese slices representing those controls. So we have assessments, we have inspections, policies, procedures, safe control of operations, and of course, auditing. Within these different controls and processes, there can be flaws and weaknesses, inevitably, and it is when these flaws and weaknesses line up as represented by the holes in the cheese that provides that opportunity for accident causation to happen. So that is why it's so important that we review our policies and procedures and we review our assessment techniques and inspection techniques so that we can close the gap and close the holes to prevent these horrible things from happening in such a safety-conscious environment. So I've given you a bit of a background, so I'm going to talk about how this project came about. In July and August last year, a high-level review of our auditing process and our management system processes was reviewed by an independent auditor, and he came out with a number of recommendations for us to adopt. Incidentally, in the September, we went through a migration audit from the old British standard 18001 for occupational health and safety to the new international standard ISO 45001. We were the first gas network to obtain that accreditation, which is fantastic, and we came out with some minor non-conformities relating to internal audit for us to address for the next time around. And then on the 1st of October, I obtained my new role in the process safety team. I thought it was really important for my professional development to sort of inaugurate myself in the internal audit process, understand the methodologies, but I also wanted to get my teeth into something as well. So I wanted to look at those recommendations, look at those minor non-conformities, and see what I can do to implement those improvements. So I've just got this from my paper, and I've grouped up the recommendations, and I'll just quickly go through those for you for a bit of context. So the auditor recognised that our policies and procedures contain slightly out-of-date phrases and referencing. They hadn't been updated in quite a while, and they didn't really complement each other in a really great way. 3 separate documents, our policy, our work and management procedure. And we also needed to look into the wider inputs that go into our audit plan. I talked about business risk process, sure, but what else should be influencing what we're auditing? As well as evaluating compliance of our auditors. Are we doing that as well as we should be? And there was some query over closure of audit actions. Is this really adopted by the auditing teams within Wells and West Utilities, and can it be more realistic in what happens in practice? And then with our management system findings, a bit of the same story really, timescales in terms of how our audit process goes through, so closure of audit actions, from an audit being initiated to completed, are these timescales consistent with what our policies and procedures say? And are we being a bit optimistic linking these management system requirements to the audit? Probably. So we really needed to have a look at that as well. So what did I do? I needed to consider the recommendations. I needed to consider the audit findings for the management system. And I had a deadline of the 31st of December. So 3 months to review these policies and procedures and implement those improvements. So I set my objective, review the policies and procedures by this date, closing out in-scope recommendations and closing out these minor non-conformities. But what was I going to do to deliver this? So I had to sit down and I had to think, what are the key milestones? I needed to meet with the people that actually carry out these audits. It's all well and good me coming in and getting an appreciation of the audit process, but unless I understand the needs and requirements of my colleagues and the challenges they have, it's not going to do much good me just putting out a bunch of policies and procedures into the universe and hope that they're followed. So I set that, and then different activities against a timescale of what I was going to do. So there's 3 very different audit teams within Wales and West. We have an operations team, we have an asset team, and our Western Gas Alliance that deliver our mains replacement project have their own audit team as well. So I wanted to connect with those colleagues to see what we needed to do to address these actions. So I got in my car and I went to the depots, and I just had a handshake and a conversation. But I went prepared with a survey, and I wanted to get their input into how we were going to improve these procedures, what were the key challenges they were facing in terms of timescales, etc., what linked in with those recommendations. But I also wanted them to have an understanding of where I was coming from as well, what we needed to do to close out those recommendations, and I brought forward my ideas. And we found some common themes and some common ground, but there were also some different challenges that I needed to adapt to. So with a lot of work within 3 months, I was able to update the policies and procedures by the 20th of December. These went through a consultation review, so they were drafted and written based on the recommendations and based on the feedback, and a panel reviewed these as we went, before being endorsed by our leadership team at a CEO level. These are published. But I didn't stop there. I wanted to support the rollout of these policies and procedures. I didn't want it to just go out and be forgotten about. So I did a briefing with my asset colleagues. I did a briefing with my operational colleagues as well, and followed it up with a bulletin and with our contractors and our operational staff, so they know where to find them and who to contact if they have any queries. So with that publication, I was able to close out the recommendations that were in scope, and I was also able to close out the audit findings as well. And it's just a snapshot of the evidence, but our policies and procedures now complement each other better. They're up to date in terms of our referencing. There are clear timescales now about what is expected of an audit and when audit action should be closed out. There are templates in place for report writing where they're consistent across the board. And we're also looking at developing a matrix as well to link our management system requirements with our audits. Industry benefits, well, as I just mentioned, timescales, we're now getting more value from our audits. So it's not a case of an audit start and we're waiting for actions. Before we know it, it's time to carry out another audit. So we're getting more value in terms of time with these timescales in place. We're more consistent, so somebody can come in outside of the industry and pick up an audit report and be aware of what they're looking at. There's a more structured approach to closing out our actions. These are reviewed at a committee level, so it's more consistent, more structured, and best practice is now implemented throughout all of these procedures, and they've come from the different areas of the business that actually do the work. And finally, what I think is most important is we got that commitment from the people actually using these policies and procedures. They've had a say in it. They might not have liked every recommendation I made, but at least they understand where I'm coming from as well. And it's that people element that I think we're missing a lot when we're carrying out these projects. Personally, I've really benefited from this. I've got some real experience in leadership, communication, performance focus, and a completer finisher. I think so many projects fail because they go on and on and on. You want to add on different elements. So given a 3-month deadline, I was really focused on what I needed to achieve. And then, you know, the future, we can still look at improving where we can. So, as I said, the future, what is next? There's still some work to do. We need to look at our safety case to make sure that these policies and procedures are reflected in that. And I've developed a matrix, which I've started rolling out with our auditors, and to some really positive feedback as well. A lot of these guys, they're stuck in their ways and they don't really want to change with the business. So we make it as easy as possible for them. And once we've sat down and had a chat, they're using the forms, they're using the matrix, they're doing it at the beginning of an audit, the beginning, the middle, the end. And it's really giving us that evidence that we need to show to the auditor next time that we are complying with what we said we're going to do. So yeah, and we're going to continually review this. Nothing is ever perfect to begin with. So we have our audit plan now for 2019, so this will be continually monitored until the end of the year. And if something works, great. If it doesn't, let's take another look at it again. This never stands still. Let's continually improve. So thank you all for listening. I hope you found it interesting. I've really enjoyed talking to you. And if you've got any questions, I'll certainly do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Well done, Jodie. Thank you very much. Where do we want to start?
Happy to jump in, Tony.
Go for it.
Thank you. I'm interested in your comments about how you personally got involved with people who were maybe a little bit defensive to this process and negative to it. Could you just elaborate on that for me, please?
Of course I can. So I met with our operations manager. He was the first person I met, so he deals with the occupational health and safety elements. And he was very forthcoming in the recommendations I made. So it was quite an easy meeting. The first one I had, I thought, this is great. He understands my needs and requirements. He's given me some good information on his business risk process, because they use different risk registers to asset management. So we were able to really work together, and I thought, this is great. I'll go to my next meeting now, and it'll be plain sailing. Second meeting didn't go as well as the first one. There was a few challenges brought up. They work in a very reactive environment, as you can imagine, in health and safety. Auditing isn't their day job as well. They might carry out inspections, they attend incidents and emergencies, and they're dealing with their people on a day-to-day basis. So when I put a recommendation together that this is an acceptable timescale, their idea of acceptable might not be the same as my idea of acceptable. So there were challenges put in place there. So although we have to be quite prescriptive with certain things, we can have an element of flexibility also. So we just made sure that our sort of critical things in terms of health and safety and what an auditor or somebody outside the business would be looking at, but also looking at their needs and requirements as well. So it was just sometimes taking a step back and not getting carried away with what my ideas were for good practice. It was just sitting and listening to what those guys had to say, and maybe me changing my perspective a little bit also. So that's how that went.
Thanks very much. Could you have you seen an impact on your audit findings and the quality of those audit findings?
I have. So we're in our second quarter now of our audit plan, and we've had a couple of the audits come back. So the asset team have carried out gas escape management audit, and they've sort of doing what we've always wanted to do anyway, and they're sort of bringing along the other departments with us. And we had an auditor from the occupational health and safety carry out their CDM audit recently. They're using the templates. They're structuring their findings based on what the best practice is. It's being agreed beforehand. It's going on our consolidated action plan to be reviewed at committee. And they're not just waiting for me to chase them. They're actually calling me to say, oh, can you send us the matrix you've developed? Can we have any input on this? So I think having that real people aspect of the project has really done me a lot of favours, because people really want to use it and they want to carry forward. So yeah, it's been fantastic. I just hope it's just keeping that momentum now. It's not losing it. Just think, oh, they've done a few audits and they've done it okay. Let's keep that momentum going so we can make further improvements as they come. So yeah, it's been great.
Jodie, this was stimulated from an external audit that's sort of kicked the ball rolling. You've made some improvements. What does good really look like, and what are the thoughts regarding more external benchmarking? Have you given any thoughts to that?
So yeah, so looking at maybe whatever parties. Sorry, can you just repeat that one more time for me, please?
This all started off with a single external auditor giving you some advice for some improvements. You've made some improvements in-house. How good is good? Is my real question. And so are you actually now evaluating yourselves against others externally?
Yeah. So we already evaluate ourselves against the management system requirements, which are an internationally recognised standard, which are used by other companies, other GDNs and other companies. So we're already comparing ourselves against world-class requirements and framework. But of course, we're always happy to hear best practice. So it could be a case of sharing it with other departments which they're using, but why not take this company-wide and industry-wide? So go into forums and talking to other people in these roles and seeing how they do things better and sharing that information both ways. So it's something I'm really open to. I guess no means of an excuse. I'm quite new in the role. So I joined the team on the 1st of October. So, okay, I'm coming up towards, well, when was that? So is it like 9 months, really? So my next sort of stage is really getting involved in auditing, so doing a qualification and being mentored. So I'm hoping now when I've got the key to the door, I can start spreading that message really well within the forums that I have access to. So it's something I will hopefully envelop as part of my future look for the project. So.
Ooh,
oh. Thank you.